Airlines for 4 years, and it's been 3 years that I'm leading a team that supports crew planning, crew scheduling applications at American Airlines. The reason I'm here, and since I've been in aviation, I've joined AGIFORS, and I love it because this is one of the, I would say, closed form communities where you can actually have a lot of knowledge sharing. I do believe in the value of sharing the knowledge among different entities involved in this industry. I'm here to share my perspective from a major airline point of view, and hear everybody else's. Hear the lessons learned, and I believe that sparks a lot of ideas, and that will keep this amazing industry evolving.
And now coming to Alex, who has a big advantage compared to other panelists, because he was on stage already last year. So it was a pleasure that you wanted to be on stage again?
Of course, I think it's always good when Daniel sends you a message, you answer and you say yes. I'm Alex Gurrow, I'm the Director of Resources at Airline, so Canadian Airlines based out of Toronto. I've been in the industry for over 15 years in crew resources, but also a pilot by trade who got obsessed with the schedule and then wanted to do more with that. I think it's interesting to have this topic in this panel. It's great to see a bunch of us in the same room who, many of us have legacy systems and that were not built at a time when AI was available or around. Now hearing the challenges that we're all going through gives us an opportunity to kind of exchange notes and ideas and say, hey, where can we pivot? We kind of all came out of the same pool of systems and technology. Just gives us an opportunity to say, hey, where can we take it from here? Not only in our own ecosystems and the countries we operate, but on a global scale.
Okay, now let's talk about the real stuff. We have learned in the last days that AI is not optimization, so that's something different. Donald mentioned already that you're using optimization here and there. The other colleagues, of course, have optimizers in place, but where is really AI already working somewhere in the airline operations crew management? Is here somebody who could say, yeah, we have already something in the cooking, it's working, we improve every day?
Yeah, so we at Viva, we're using OCAM, which is kind of a solver that has AI in it. And the idea is that as it goes generating ideas for the day of operation and the day +1, that it goes learning which are the ones that the people is selecting and try to give better solutions. We're still fighting for everyone in the OCC to use it. But the ones that have used the tool, it actually gives good ideas. So it's just a matter of getting everyone to use it so it can get better trained. That's as far as we're using it at this moment.
Anybody else? You have something in the cooking?
No, yeah, as mentioned, we haven't yet implemented AI. We have Airline Optimizer, but it has already been transformative for us, and that's give us the glimpse of how AI can improve our operations.
Before I ask Tristan, Fanny, Tulu, Alex, you have already AI?
I think you said AI is...
Wait.
Sorry.
I want to have your conclusion later, because for me, you are the representative of you know what airlines do.
Okay.
Fanny, Tulu?
Actually, we can say of course we have AI, but talking about operation is not fully AI, especially for crew management side. In Cathay recently, we have the AI for the EFD, which is flight filter for the dispatch, but not Cathay and in the crew management side. And talking about especially in the operation side, I think currently most of the decision making is by human. Of course, we have AI to produce some kind of data, some kind of past record to get some recommendation and so some kind of element to that you to consider. But eventually, when doing DevOps, then we still have using human judgment and also by experience to handle our DevOps.
AI on the backbone of a legacy system, is this already possible in Dallas?
I'm going going to start with saying that my assumption is that the backbone of AI is also optimization. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So at American, we have been using AI and specifically optimization tools in the crew scheduling for years. I can actually explain a couple of tools that are I would say, related to each other. And I know that through some of the talks in the past 2 days we talked about them. One of them is actually a tool that we use in order to predict the availability of our pilots prior to the day of operation. We use machine learning models to kind of get the historical knowledge on the data, kind of what sequences we actually ended up having premium, what sequences we ended up using reserves for, and based on that, taking that information into an optimization tool, which is actually now very critical to the operation of American Airlines and the quality of life of the pilots, where you can actually trade your trips until 2 days prior to operation with your colleagues. So it has been groundbreaking to bring, I would say, like I said, quality of life to the pilots. I know we've talked about it, but this has been one of the areas where our business unit started to believe in the value of using data-driven tools. And yes, I mean, we keep on evolving those. Yeah.
How is it going in Canada?
So, an airline that goes through hyper growth like us, we have a lot of team members that join IOCC. The way we approach AI is taking it to help support decision making. We have team members who maybe are not familiar with their operation, the ebbs and flows of the airports that we operate out of in Canada, seasonal, dynamic operational structure that we have in Toronto. We've used AI to help support decision making, to say, hey, AI is not the front runner of the show, but it is your sidekick to help you make an informed decision to say, hey, I've never encountered this situation, there's a recommendation to support you. You have the colleagues that you rely on to make great operational decisions, that's it. Take our passengers safely from point A to point B, but we've considered AI as that friend who's really knowledgeable, who can provide a recommendation, and what that's done for us is helped us speed up our decision making. At a time in an industry where minutes count, hours count for flight duty periods, crew limitations, our own governing bodies, it's helped us speed up that decision making process.
Please, Tom, you can potentially give us a state of the industry overview. You help airlines to manage RFP. You know many of these systems, you know many airlines. So is there an airline where you see AI is really already in use? Or are we just at the beginning and we talk a lot about this topic?
I think if you see today the discussion, but also since the 3 days on this AGIFORS conference, we almost every day talk about AI. And I think AI is able to support any stage of the global crew management scope, of course, but not only. And it's a very large application potential. However, you introduce AI as something different from optimizers. If you mind, I would complete, say it's something between RPA and optimizers. It's not either an RPA. RPA is robotic process optimization, which is also something very useful for airline. But AI is in between of these two way of working. And of course, I think we just see that there is multiple usage currently either in progress or cooking. But what make all this initiative similar is several criteria. First of all, AI need data. So you need to look about data in order to get AI because it's machine learning. It's something which works with holistic approach. And then if you're looking for AI for a specific topic, usually it's not very accurate. The second criteria for me is something which is not completely 100% replicable because it depends on external factors. That's the difference between RPA and AI, because RPA can do everything every time the same thing. AI needs to analyze something in order to take a decision, or I would say to, based on their experience, go into the most probabilistic direction. I would say like that. And then the last criteria is something which is, of course, not very interesting or not very added value in terms of processing. And in that case, AI today is more likely not to replace intelligence from human. Even if AI means artificial intelligence, I think of course the word is a little bit too marketing, because the brain of a human can manage much more information, including non-quantitative information, that an AI cannot do today. Now, this is basically all the prerequisites to set up a good project in AI. Now, talking about crew, we see also some initiative and I think it was a presentation yesterday about that, which is trying to, on an upstream process, facilitate coding for system optimization. And to be presented last day, how they could convert regulation into something accessible. Marcel asked a question which is very much in line with many initiatives we see, which is airline business analysis trying to use AI to generate code. And today we know that the AI model is very good for coding, and this is a usage which is growing a bit, to let the airline be more autonomous in terms of updating the rules or adding soft rules on their optimization. So that's one of the usage we see quite well. Another one which is managing crew in terms of relation. Some airlines also analyzes many of the emails or the voice call they receive from crew and trying to identify what are the trends of the moment. And that gives two benefits. These give benefits about what is the really preference from the crew, depending on the way you are capturing preference, desiderates, bidding, whatever. This is a way to feel what my crew population wants. And the kind of a test of the current situation. So when you are in a tension or where you have a very dense flight program, you can see how the crew are reacting by analysis all these interface, whether it's regional or local. So again, many usage potential, but some of them are quite interesting.
So I remember when I was a product manager 11 years ago, I was already investigating AI. So AI is not a new topic. So let's talk about the reason what is holding us back. That 11 years later, we are not having more arms raised up in the air because people say, oh, we have already AI. Like, what are the obstacles to overcome? Data quality, integration, legacy system, or is it the mindset? So, Raquel, you work for 3 airlines. Were there 3 different mindsets in place, or is it always the same? And how important is also the human factor in all this AI topic?
Definitely 3 different mindsets, totally 3 different cultures. Even though we're kind of near one country to the other, I do think that the human factor is definitely unlimited today at Viva. We do have the solver that, when you need fast decisions, I do think that this is a help in order to move aircraft and know what to cancel, etc., in a faster way. And still we have the resistance of people on the LCC that do not want to use that solution. They trust more in their experience that maybe takes longer. And definitely, this is one of the obstacles that we're having in the uses of AI. I also think that data, I don't know what the others experience, but for me and my 3 experiences, we have a lot of data. That it's certain that it works for something, I'm not too sure. But we usually have tons of information in Excel spreadsheets and databases, etc. But taking the time to understand what we can do with all of this data that can help us to solve situations, I think is what takes us longer in order to have a solution that will actually be helpful.
How is it at Cebu? What is holding you back to have already more progress with AI in the operations? Is it that the people in the OCC don't trust what comes from a technology vendor? Is it that the data is not integrated enough? Some systems, which are the bottlenecks? What are the main reasons?
I think AI starts purely from a technical perspective, but we all know that airline operations or crew management specifically is somehow deeply human because it involves unions, crew morale, and local culture. I think the problem is not the technical performance, but the practical fit.
IOCC, but an AIOC in that is fully automated, less people, everything done by algorithms. And there's a vendor who is promising more.
Can I repeat your question? You said if I had all the power, what was the...
What would hinder you to really have a full-fledged AIOC in that?
I think some of our friends mentioned, I would say, the challenges which is similar to AA. What I want to also bring up is the fact that we are in a highly regulated space. We are unionized after a lot of negotiations on the new agreements, and that all of you know like how many years it would take. And by the time you feel like we're now already falling behind. Definitely the legacy systems we have, and we have a lot of them at American, are, I would say, one of the main reasons that hinders us back from really employing what it has, AI has to offer. The other thing that I think is what we experience as a large airline is we all know the value of integration. It's great to see everything together, but if at the scale of American Airlines you put two of these problems together, it becomes kind of so complex you cannot solve it. With regular, I would say, algorithms. So what is that right scope that gives you the high value so you can actually demonstrate the value of AI? Because we need those in order to push, or I would say advocate for the tools, for partners to show the value. I think that those are few of the main ones. And one other thing is the experience that I have today is lack of a standard processes, and which is also hard to change. We have a tool, we are trying to find out what is the way our crew schedulers are making decisions so we can start helping them, providing some recommendations. We talked to 5 people, and I think again that's not a new problem to a lot of you. We find different ways of solving the same problem. So what is that tool that is flexible enough to handle all of these great minds that have been actually running the operation for many years, so we can have them on board so they actually start using it. That's the challenge.
Alex, you now the Porter Airline CEO, don't tell me regulations. This is already ticked the box. I was understanding the vendors are not flexible enough. What is the reason, Canada, that we are not much more advanced in AI in your operation?
But when we think of AI, we think of a technological component, where it's not so much of an IT transformation. There are components that it is, but it's more an enterprise transformation. It's, can you get your team members and your personnel to buy into the idea and trust the system? A lot of us built these monolithic legacy systems which work in isolation. They serve their function, they serve it well. How do you integrate that? I mean, we mentioned data. Data can be messy, it can be fragmented, it can be scattered, it can be hidden in an Excel sheet, it can be left with one of your colleagues in the form of tribal knowledge that they haven't documented. So getting all that. And then the other part I think that weighs on a lot of people's, a great colleague of mine mentioned that implementing AI, running technological, when you're running an operation, is akin to doing open heart surgery while running a marathon. You're still doing your operation, you still have passengers to get there, but now you're taking out these monolithic systems, breaking them down, rearranging them. Your first breakdown, your first attempt at implementing any sort of technology could have more problems as you kind of unravel this ball of yarn that was your old system. So I think knowing those factors, there's a little bit of an apprehension to say, can I adopt this and trust it the way this system has held me for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years? And I think that psychological barrier is something that not only myself, but most of my colleagues in the group contend with on a daily.
Psychology, mindset, human factor. So my summary is that the main obstacle we have to overcome is really the trust from the people in the room to the technology offered by the vendor. So then let's talk about some baby steps we could maybe go together, considering the workflow of crew management from planning to execution. Okay, where would you like to have some vendors showing you something which is not yet available, and if they come to you in a presentation, that you would be somehow amazed, oh yeah, that is something we like to have in our operation?
Well, I think that starting with the crew planning side, starting at pairings, at crew bases definition, at Viva we have 9 crew bases and open to be adding more. So I do think that we have enough information from the connecting the sync file and our pairings and the retiming and also the decisions that we have made of how long we have had this amount of aircrafts rotating in the cities that will help us to decide where we should have crews, where we should only have pilots maybe, and taking the constraints that we have. I think it's not a Viva situation. There are not much captains out there, so trying to manage the difference between the different type of crew that we're managing, I think that will be super helpful, and to also have a feedback from what is happening in the operation directly into the decisions that we take in the planning phase. At the moment, I believe we have very standard solutions that, yeah, we will look at what's happening in the block times and then take the decision isolated and then go and sit down with scheduling and see what you can move 3 to 5 minutes. So everything is kind of isolated and decisions that I make separately. And I do think that we can have a full circle of the feedback of what's happening in each stage to have better decisions.
I hope, Ramona, you have listened well because you have soon your vendor presentation done, and you have potentially also some hints for her what you expect she is presenting next time to you.
Well, I wish we could have an AI tool that can simulate the feel of the crew roster, the disciplines, not just legality, but the real feel of being the AI. And yeah, I would like how the AI that could really feel that's the sequence of the flight and the roster produces. And I think that a human-aware AI would be a game changer.
Christoph, you mentioned the rule check and rule administration. Is this where you see the biggest impact for now, or is there another hint you can give airlines to look further and evaluate maybe the impact for their operations?
No, I think if I would have a limited credit for AI in ops, I would say welcome to Minority Report, basically, because this is what the door can be opened by AI, and I can highlight a very important thing that we are here all managing crew, but we are working very closely with ops. And if we talk with ops people, as we've done last week, ops people are working very closely with flight scheduling. And this is all what about AI is. It's breaking silos, getting data, and trying to have a global evaluation and estimation, or even predictable, of what's going to happen in a holistic view. If I may give you an example of something which is a little bit disruptive from both ops and crew, and because we are in Cebu and we have this presentation at the beginning about your CEO explaining that you were in a very uncertain environment from a weather perspective, imagine that AI could help you gathering weather data to give you predictability about whether a storm is going to come or not. And then ops would estimate what are the potential scenarios to do whether that's not coming. And then as a crew scheduler, you will predictable some scenario about how to rehandle your crew if that storm is coming. That's basically not realistic today, but it's coming very quick. And there is some vendors of that room, which I know, which are already working on that kind of things, which is getting data, not even breaking the silo on upside, but also more globally with ATC data, with weather data, with sometimes economic data. Of course, this is Minority Report again. Okay, we're talking about very medium and long-term vision, but this is what about the potential of AI is. It's how we could break silos, anticipate things, and try to empower people to think about decisions. And when we are implementing AI projects, usually, and again it has been highlighted, people are afraid about that. They think it's going to take their job. But that's not real. All AI positive aspect will be to empower these people to help them not make actions, but think about decisions. And this is all about the challenge we have when we implemented that kind of project in order to showcase to people that it's something which can help them.
These days, and I think again, some friends already mentioned, the process we have today is kind of sequential, starting from where we publish the schedule, and from there it cascades to airports, tech ops, and crew to validate whether that's an operable schedule. And that process of kind of analyzing that takes weeks, and by the time that you're done turning that around, it's late to change anything, so technically you will bake into that plan as much as you can, but definitely it's not going to be a quality decision. At most you can go through a couple of scenarios. So scenario-based optimization models that allow the crew planners, which are at a very high stake and critical position to make such decisions, I think to me is very critical to connect these entities in a faster pace. Instead of being like I would say hierarchical, you actually have this loop back and forth to adjust the schedule, detect patterns of inefficiencies, and bake what it actually makes sense into the schedule of the tails as well as the crew, so it is going to be a resilient plan, and we're actually going to execute it. I think and how much of that inefficiency is feasible. I mean, the IROPS, I think, are one of our biggest hurdles. I think I love the vision that Tristan had predicting IROPS. That will be like a long-term great vision. But at this point, to me, it means that if I even can handle simple disruptions and bake them into the plan, I know that I can recover quickly. So I think that's what we could get a lot from in the planning space.
I'm going to echo what Raquel and Benny said about speed. Providing AI to support you in making critical decisions in a timely fashion, or a quick decision where we look at our colleagues sometimes, they're tired, they've been bogged down in IROPS, and then they're trying to make a critical decision, but the amount of time it's taking them to pull some sort of information, whether it's an MPP reference or something else from your own internal processes or labor contracts. Having AI help speed up those processes so they could focus on making the right decisions. Your crew controllers are looking at the day of problem. Maybe your organization has crew controls that look a little bit further out of the 24-hour window. Having each stage and each tier of that operation supported with AI to make the right decisions helps significantly in IROPS. So you reduce your, for lack of a better term, your IROP hangover from a 3-day snowstorm meltdown into maybe half a day, 1 day, if you could present and accelerate those processes that you have that you manually do. From a vendor standpoint, there's value in seeing the need for speed, for lack of a better term, and seeing the desire from, as mentioned, from my peers here. How can a vendor accelerate the processing for you? And I think the interesting point that vendors and other consultants in the industry can see a common theme amongst carriers is that not only is it happening in Canada, in the States, Mexico, and Hong Kong, you're seeing an opportunity where there's kind of a unified front of what we need. So not so much of a call for help, but maybe a place where vendors can look at and say, that's a good starting point for us to go into and explore, because all of them raise the same flag.
That's a perfect cliffhanger. Let's talk a little bit what you have seen the last 2 days from vendors, but also from industry colleagues sharing their experiences and their projects. Some of you were attending AGIFORS also last year and before that. It's still not everything what has been presented 5 years ago has been ever implemented somewhere, and the same also what has been maybe on an innovation board. So if you have to give a hint to the vendors in the room, Raquel, where do you think they should focus more? What was missing maybe in the one and the other presentation? And what was presented by say, oh, this is really something which I will consider to discuss more home, because that's really something.
I think that there is a basic phase, and this is my experience in Latin America. I believe that we and I think people were complex at the beginning. And usually, at least in my experience and my previous experience in Avianca, there was 7 AOCs, there was 7 different rule sets, and people have as many unions as you want and different rules. I think that that's the beginning. For me, even looking at changing or regular systems is a headache just to get the flexibility of getting rules in there, having union agreements put into a system with things that are not like a rule globally. And if we can have that flexibility in systems, then it will be hard for the system to give us options, because I believe that in the LCC, maybe crewing is the more specific and hard to fix, because then you got the human being behind, and then you got all the rules and the fatigue. And for aircraft, it's super easy to have rules where this aircraft can go, etc. For crew, it's so much more information. And if we can't have that flexibility from the configuration side, then it's difficult to have accurate options from the system to solve crewing issues in the day-to-day. And maybe something that I will say to vendors that I will definitely look at, I think those days, and we saw a presentation of Southwest and JetBlue's situation a couple years ago, is how fast can I recover from an IRAP? And I think that that's where we're more lacking, and that we are able to go again to each airline with their own necessities in order to have that information back into our program and have a solution. Recover easily.
Donald, what impressed you most, or was there something you say, oh, I was so lucky to have this presentation, or did you know already everything? Any hint for the vendors to improve for next year?
Yeah, sorry, I think AI still falls short when it operates without any noise. And it's because for example, a crew member is assigned to a typical schedule, but from a series of night duties. Human schedulers might avoid them. And yeah, I'm sorry, I have a cheat sheet here. So yeah, I think because crew scheduling is not just about use, so I think that AI can also take into consideration the relationships, the communication and the trust.
Please know, you know plenty of the vendors already, you get some updates, you could have nice coffee break conversations, maybe also with one or the other beer. Have you heard something that said, if vendors focus more on this will also help to bridge this trust gap in the industry, because if the vendors are taking this angle, this will convince management to spend more money on AI and on operations and crew management.
Daniel, if you mind, I will take the example of the Maslow pyramid. You know the Maslow pyramid, which make some step-by-step for people feeling good. I would take that image for ops as well. I think we were today in an area where the basic of that was to set up the hard rules. And as you say, okay, the hard rules was the main focus of vendors of the last decade or the last 20 years, about setting system able to efficiently set a reliable system which makes sure that I'm controlling and I'm fitting the goals. We see the last few years coming to soft rules. And we have a very good example of soft rules today about fatigue, for example, which is a definition of soft rules, but there is also soft rules about efficiency. Any airlines on their optimizers has rules with avoiding such patterns because they know it's not efficient, and some additional soft rules like that. And I think we are entering into a world for vendors to work around these soft rules, again using AI, by adding crew preference, crew bidding. We also yesterday see the counter transportation factors, all these factors which can be set as a soft roles into a good rosters. I like the presentation of Martin saying, what's a good rosters? Good rosters is something with hard and soft roles. And having a good rosters is something which is kind of a little more holistic than only hard roles, but also, and that's super important, set something which is resilient when will come the time of DLO. And again, Raquel highlighted the challenge that the crew trackers have when they have to manage problems. So when you are building the rosters, you also need to have something, and I like the image of a kind of a value, like we say yesterday on the FLMS system. How fatigued is my rosters? But imagine something which gives you how resilient is my rosters. Is it if I'm twisting my pairings to get an efficient planning, then it's turning red, forming the crew schedules that is building an efficient planning. That's at risk for operations. That would be very, I think, very useful for airlines. I haven't seen that yet in any countries, but that's what AI could bring on with a plus, which is a customization of every airline experience. Because AI is based on experience of what happened before airline per airline. That will be very interesting, I think.
Fanny, what is your feedback to the vendors last 2 days and also your industry colleagues? Was there something you would like to see more next year?
For the vendors, actually, when we go to conference, of course, we share what's the best there. But on my side, we also want to let you know that what exactly we require, and also if you can sit in or even join to the team for more longer time, then you can understand about what exactly our, just like I mentioned, our culture, our historical issue, because any AI is really complex and really unique. Even though we have the same set or similar set of AITL rules, we also have a little bit difference inside. Not talking about software, just like the AITL rules, we also have difference. Just like Cathay, actually, wherever airplane from international flight, so we have capacity with regional flying, long-haul flying, and also ultra-long flying. We have document crew as well, so it's lots of this kind of stuff. Something like we don't have too many. So, as I mentioned, that we have a new checking system. So when they receiving our requirement, they always say, "Wow, Cathay, why we don't have so many requirements?" Yes, we do. And with an airline with around 5 years, Cathay from the Cathay space, we of course we do have lots of airline, which is the CU, but again we also have lots of common rule which is built for many years, which means we can't really just be releasing all the software, both on the companies and the side. So actually, I'm looking forward to this. If the vendor really want to get in touch with the airline.
Days putting the liquor and the food beside, was there something where you say, oh, this really impressed me? And what are your expectations for next year?
So I think, again, summarize what I expect.
We talk about AI, some of the vendors presented what they were doing, what they're offering. Is this what you need, or do you want to have presented next year something in different areas?
So, from the technical standpoint, I was excited to see all the capabilities that was actually presented by the vendors. I have no doubt that the teams and the work that has been putting into what was presented was amazing, state of the art. What I actually like to hear more about is not on the technical side, and I think we have one presentation from Steven yesterday that I really enjoyed. It was around happiness of pilots. I would like to emphasize on one skill which is quite important, and that's active listening, which is kind of around the human factor. Having the users, and the users would be not only the tool users, let's say crew planner, crew schedulers, but also the pilots in the design process. Because everyone needs to be valued and be heard. As a result of it, you will have people who are on board with you, with the tools you're proposing, and that can do wonders. The other aspect is, for airlines like ours, we have our internal analytical team. We have a team of 80 people. And I want to speak about the elephant in the room, which is we're not competing together. I like to see us collaborating together and find areas where we complement each other. In some places, I see vendors will be quite beneficial to help us speed up on implementing really quick decision-making tools, whereas we need our internal bandwidth to support some of our initiatives for long term and keep up with the changes that we have in our contracts every few years or so. So that's what I actually like to hear more about, which is more around bringing the human on board and having this people first mindset, so that we have people who are excited and happy to use the tools.
Perfect. Alex?
I think a lot of presentations, there are a lot of great presentations that focus on the pain points that we suffer collectively. I think a lot of the great conversations I had with some of the vendors here were kind of off the ice, pardon the hockey reference. Conversations that we could have a little more candid on what's hurting us specifically in our operation. Although similar to many, there's unique and intrinsic components that make us a little different. So having those conversations and saying what you spoke on or what you presented on screen, take that and say, this is how it applies in my filter, in my world. And I think those conversations were really great to get to know some of the vendors and say, hey, this is where I'm hurting. And hearing the feedback and say, well, we can tailor this or we can go here. And those kind of fireside chats really did really well for a lot of us here. Kind of facilitating that and saying, hey, that kind of worked really well this year. How do we build on that? And I think we did that from comparing more than the last year to this year.
By the way, is there a question from the audience to the panelists? In Doha, we had the complaints that no questions were allowed. Marcel? Maybe start with George in the back.
George. Thank you, Rob. Fantastic, allowing us to pick your brains. I want to, eventually, I think, everybody's going to go down the rabbit hole of AI. It will happen eventually. So, my dog years in this line of work in AI, I think eventually one of the questions you would have to answer is, how do you rank what is important in AI applications when it comes to firstly speed, which some of you, I think you guys already mentioned that. Second aspect is explainability, and last is accuracy. Because why I bring that up is because today, or mostly you use linear models. The moment you go into nonlinear models, or using advanced heuristic algorithms, explainability is thrown out the window. Accuracy definitely comes at the cost of it. So the way you see today what you do in your current, whether it's OR or whether it's disruption, what's the place, what is the pecking order of what is important? So speed, explainability versus the accuracy.
Well, I think that's a really good question. In my experience, I believe that speed for the OCC will be my first option, and to having people, again, using their time in the most valuable way. But for example, now at Viva we have several aircraft grounded due to engine topics, and we have ACME operations, and we have segregation of what flights can be done by the ACME operator and what operation we can do, and we have had to compare EASA to Mexican rule sets and use most restrictive one in specific things. And so for me, their accuracy will be in the planning side, what I will go with.
Anybody else wants to answer this question?
Maybe for Cebu Pacific, it should be the balance between the accuracy and the speed. Because we are actually looking for a roster optimizer that also take into consideration the fatigue in the roster build. But yeah, I think yes, For example, AI can provide legally compliant roster, but it should be operationally sensitive as well. So, but yeah, same with you. We want to build a roster fast, of course. We want to publish that on time. But of course, it should be legal in all aspects.
But I believe this will be a different panel discussion, the difference between AI-generated roster and an OR-generated roster. But okay, that's something else.
And maybe just to add something else to my answer, I do think that in the day-to-day, it is easier to train AI. You have more scenarios, you can do that faster, so quicker you can have options. That's all helpful because you have a lot of experience there to train them on, not so and not inside.
I may add something about the current accuracy. What do you target when you set an accuracy system? And I think this answer is difficult to answer because there is no single answer. And my experience is that usually, especially on the day of operations on the OCC side, people doesn't like very much unique solution push up by a machine. However, it is accuracy or speedy or whatever it is, a single optimized solution from an OCC duty manager is something strange because it's not that simple in real life. So I would add to that list a criteria which is for the OCC, and that's different from the other stage before the DO. It's potentiality. How could the AI give scenarios to the duty managers to say, if she wants to save your crew time, this is the best scenario. If you want to protect your passengers, this is your best scenarios. And if you want to bring back as quick as possible to normal solutions, this is scenarios. On each scenario show pros and cons. Because we are not talking about positive aspects of AI, but there is that. There is negative aspect of AI. And AI, like we see on optimizers as well, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but we all see that if you speak to old crew schedulers, they're going to say, oh, this generation, that population, they don't have a clue about regulations. They just rely on machines. And then if one day the machine is falling down, cyber attack, whatever it could be, then we all guys, we know how it is really. We know, and we are even able to do on papers. And I think this is also something we need to hear about, which is people shouldn't rely 100% on machines. People still need to understand what the EI system is going to do. And then the EI need to present that result with pros and cons, because there is never a unique, perfect solution. And then depending on culture, depending on context, depending on a lot of factors about which scenario should I take, and that's how you will empower your duty managers with an AI, and that's where they will see a very interest. It's a quick machine giving them realistic options, legal options, which give them a different alternative depending on what they are chasing after. And I think that's also important to highlight.
If you're interested, Anja Mahler from University of Illinois came back to me. I can share this with you because summary was 80-20 is good enough, because the cost for having the perfect solution is so high, it takes so much time, and they have evaluated it. And I live myself with 80-20. It's fast, makes fun, and I'm not saying it shall not be legal and so on. This is all of course considered, but 80-20, I think that's also what Raquel mentioned, agile, quick, but still working out, and that's what the industry needs. There was one more question, I believe, Marcel. Yes.
Thank you. Great insight, great discussions. We're talking about disruptions here, so I'm going to throw in an idea that's very controversial. How about, because we all know that nowadays one of the problems is to staff, and you have a shortage of pilots. How about AI replacing the FO? You know, when I started flying, there was also an FE, which technology now has eliminated. And any thoughts about just having one pilot flying assisted by the AI, what the AI, what the F actually does?
I think that's it. I mean, again, the human factor against the technology. I think that we're still a couple years from that. I know that there are some companies already doing testings and one pilot and so forth. Maybe we are in baby steps, private aviation. I know that this will take a long time for people with 300 people in the bag to be comfortable with only one guy, and what happens if that guy is not anymore available. But definitely that's an option, and I do think that we're going there at some point. Hold close, I'm not sure. But then there is a lot of work to do in order to get there, because accuracy will be there, the most important topic in order to trust a computer system to take decisions for a human.
You get a free ticket to come in 2 weeks, either to Caen in Paris, in France, where we will present a study on drones. Drones, the non-pilot aircraft. It's nothing linked to technology. Technology already, since years, know how to fly an aircraft without any pilot. So it's not either a question of technology or AI, whatever it is. It's all about a question of social acceptance, of matching regulations, and having a question about what happened if. And there is really no topic on technology side on that one. If you go to the Bourget side, the International Air Paris show, which is going to be in 3 weeks, and if you would have come on the previous one, you would have seen plenty of stands with very smart people building incredible machines able to fly alone. When you look now, how many have go to bankruptcy? A huge number of them. So it is, for me, AI will not give any advance on that because it's not a technology topic. It's a human factor being. It's how do I, so when we're talking about non-pilot, how do we set up an aircraft with a machine-to-machine exchange in a world of ATC where it's a speech-to-speech voice control. So this is all the challenge of that world where we will dream about flying without any pilot. But from my point of view, it's nothing linked to technology.
Any further questions from the audience? So we spoke a lot about training models and all of the bits that go along with that. Is there a greater value put on training with your own data or using the community, like the community of airlines, or maybe partner airlines within your alliance? We're all secret little individual snowflakes, but there is still a lot of crossover there. Have your airlines been sharing data or thinking about sharing data is probably one question. And then the second part is, are people receptive to that, or is it there's a lot of background IP or the view of background IP within data that stops that from happening?
For me, I will rescue something that Tool said before. I think there is a lot of information, at least from the cooling side, that is not documented. And I was just having some conversations this morning with crew control supervisors, and the feedback that I get from crew control is that when I'm in the shift with this supervisor, things goes this way, and when I'm with this other supervisor, things goes this other way, and they're all valid ways. So documenting all of these options and documenting all of our processes that change a lot more faster now, I think that's the first step before even trying to have answers from something that is not completely documented.
But I like your question because you are all convinced that your operations is so unique. And there are some airlines who build in-house IT systems and then try to sell their uniqueness to other airlines. So it cannot be that you are also unique. So I think that's something where I invite you all. Some of you might know that I do this Airline Enigma LinkedIn 900 members, 226 airlines. And 2 years ago we had Project Genesis, where we were creating a manual describing the standards of crew planning. Why we are not having something similar on this topic of AI? And let's find out whether you are all so unique. Because the conclusion on this Project Genesis was that almost all airlines said, no, we can exactly work like it is described in this manual. And it was a collaboration of 5 to 6 airlines from all over the world. So that's why I think this question, if we answer this question, it will also help all vendors. Because very often you work together with one vendor or with one university from your side and you don't know what's going on. Now we know a little bit better because we have plenty of airlines here sharing some of the insights, but we have more airlines sitting in the room and maybe we have lost the opportunity to have the most advanced airline on stage. So that's, I think we need to somehow work closer together. That's also a question for Philip and Marcel. Which role AGIFORS can play? Is there maybe next time a think tank session or some group exercise where on specific topics airlines come together and create a document? That's also something I'm a bit missing from these events. We get this document from all the presentations, but what is our agreement? Like if countries go on a World Climate Summit, they agree at least for something. What is our agreement? Maybe, I know, I'm always the mean guy, I'm asking the mean questions, poking the bear, but I have attended so many AGIFORS conferences, and still I see a lot of paper, a lot of Excel, and everything is reactionary. The solutions are there. I have, of course, recommended one of my favorite books, which is about the human factor. I can strongly recommend to talk more about the human factor because we all have fears and we need to overcome the fear of new technology, and that's also AI. So a big thank you to all the panelists that you have overcome your imposter syndrome. You are already, so next year you would be then the gold standard of panelists. 3 years in a row, so I hope I can count on you. And yeah, thank you very much also for the audience, for the questions, and a big applause to the panelists.